Happy game day, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Before the Sandstorm. I am Kendall Smith alongside of Wes Mitchell back here to preview South Carolina's game tonight against the Missouri Tigers, slated for 4 p.m. on the SEC Network. And Wes, South Carolina coming off of a huge win last week against Florida. And the big question to start this out, now that South Carolina has 5 wins on the season, is what do the Gamecocks need to do to get that extra win to become bowl eligible? They're playing the Tigers in Columbia for the next 3 weeks, so they have a chance every single week against the Tigers in Columbia to get that final win to become bowl eligible. So what do they need to do to get there?
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for them. I think we all looked at the schedule coming in, and you sort of said, where's the game that South Carolina can win that they're, like, quote, not supposed to? And I'll be honest, we got to a point where I was like, that win may not be coming. And you sort of maybe circled this Missouri game, even with the struggles in the first half, when you were looking at the second half of the schedule, and you said, that's a winnable game. Where's the other winnable game? And South Carolina took care of business. They did what they needed to do. So now they go into this Missouri game with it right there ahead of them, right? Like, if they execute today, they have an opportunity to go ahead and get bowl eligible. We'll talk a little bit more, I'm sure, during the show about sort of dealing with success this week. But I think certainly the first thing you sort of think about with these two teams is the fact that Missouri has struggled to stop the run for most of the year. South Carolina has struggled to run the football for most of the year. Was last week just a, like, flash in the pan, everything sort of just went well? Or was that a sign that South Carolina's running game has finally found itself? I think the answer to that question will also determine who wins this football game.
Talk about South Carolina's offense from last week, and obviously a star of the game was Jason Brown coming in to start his very first SEC game of his entire career. He did a great job, but obviously last week's game behind South Carolina. And Jason Brown talked this week during his press conference about how the standard is here now and how he needs to overachieve that standard that is set. So what does he need to do this week to make sure that he stays the same way he was last week, even making improvements from there and not resting on what happened against Florida?
Yeah, I think he's got to sort of try to keep it right there, Kendall. Like, he played very well. You don't want to get into a mindset where you try to do too much and try to just put the entire team on your back. Jason Brown, we talked about it last week going into the game when, sort of trying to give the fans an idea of what style of quarterback that he is. He's got a little bit of gunslinger to him. We saw that, obviously, with that spin move where he spun away from the defensive pass rusher and chunked that ball like 62 yards down the field to Josh Vann. We knew he could do that. I think the most impressive thing was that Jason Brown also stayed within himself. There were several times where he rolled out, there was no one open. He just tossed the ball to the sideline, lived to the next down, incomplete pass. So when he says he wants to do more, I think he's also got to be careful. Stay within yourself. Do what you did on Saturday, because it was definitely enough. Make some big plays, but don't put the ball in danger. PFF, the Pro Football Focus guys that have the advanced analytics, out of all of his passes, he threw 24 passes. 0 of those attempts were deemed as interceptable passes. So that is a sign that, sometimes a quarterback maybe throws 5 interceptable passes in a game. And if you look at the traditional stats, they'll be like, he didn't throw a pick, but it's because a DB dropped 3 of them, or he just got lucky. Well, that stat tells you that Jason Brown was truly protecting the football while also giving you that added threat of, him rolling out and finding Josh Vann in the end zone for that touchdown. That's an element we have not seen South Carolina have this year. So that's the most impressive thing to me is he's a gunslinger, but he walked that line that every quarterback sometimes struggles to walk. So he's got to keep doing that this week. He can't use last week and say, I got to do more, and then throw 3 picks this week.
You mentioned Josh Vann there. I think he's still in the end zone over at Williams-Brice Stadium waiting for the ball. But, yeah, Jason Brown last week was exceptional, especially in terms of staying within himself, like you said. We talked about it on the show. He's been one in the past to maybe be a little bit of a turnover, I don't want to say machine, but someone who would turn the ball over maybe a little bit more than usual. And last week he did a great job of just staying calm, living up to the moment. So hopefully that continues this week. Shane Beamer said the team isn't thinking about a bowl game, and every time they do think about it, the coaching staff tells them to stop. But I think that's even hard to say, because when you know that you have one more game to win and then you become bowl eligible, it's always going to be in the back of your mind, like, this could be the week that South Carolina gets to 6 wins. But they are playing a Missouri team that maybe isn't the best in the SEC, but as we saw last week with South Carolina and Florida, anything can happen in SEC play. So what about this Missouri team does South Carolina need to be extremely aware of as they head into tonight's matchup in Columbia?
You know, I think the big thing is that the fan base right now sort of feels like this is a game South Carolina's going to go down there and just win, just based on what they saw last week. And I think this is a true toss-up type football game. If you look at Vegas, which, those guys are normally pretty accurate with the lines they set. They had Missouri as a slight favorite to start out. As of right now, it's like an even pick 'em. The ESPN FPI is like 52% Missouri, 48% South Carolina, which is about as close as you're going to see it get. Probably a little bit of home field advantage built in there for Missouri. But, this is a Missouri team that for most of the year, has been a similar team to South Carolina as far as the win-loss record. Now, they're built differently. Missouri has struggled on defense and been pretty good on offense. South Carolina has struggled on offense and been pretty good on defense. So which weakness has improved, the most, and which strength, because it's weakness versus weakness and strength versus strength, which strength is actually, the strongest, I think will be interesting to see. With Missouri, also, we'll be tracking who's their starting quarterback. Connor Bazelak has been out with an injury. Still not sure. The guess from the Missouri reporters has been that he will not be available. They've rotated a couple of guys last week at Georgia. So you may have, depending on which guy they go with, a situation where South Carolina's defense is facing a very inexperienced quarterback, which clearly could go their direction if Jason Brown on the other side can do what we talked about earlier and keep playing to the level he did last week.
So we talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but South Carolina dealing with success. They beat a Florida team last week that they were not supposed to beat, which, by the way, I predicted South Carolina to win that game. I think I've said that in every single show this week, but I just have to give myself a pat on the back for that one because it was one of the proudest moments of my career. But South Carolina, again, taking down Florida, they were not supposed to do that. And they're dealing with the success of that game. It gets the fan base super hyped up. It gets the coaches, the team very, very excited. But South Carolina now needs to focus on what's next, which is Missouri today. They don't need to focus on the past. So do you think, from what you've seen, from what you heard this week, that South Carolina is fully focused on today's game and they're no longer thinking about that Florida win last week?
Yeah, they're saying all the right things. I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody watching or listening that they 100% are, because I'm in wait and see mode. I've lived in this state my entire life, Kendall. I've covered this football team for a long time. I have, I went to school at South Carolina. I can't tell you how many times I've seen South Carolina have a big win and follow it up with a letdown. You even go back a couple of years ago, beating Georgia at Georgia. That was a marquee signature win for Will Muschamp at the time. South Carolina follows that up and I think loses the rest of the games that season. So you look and it's a great win. It's a signature win. But now can you deal with it? Even the Josh Van video, freaking hilarious. Like probably it takes a lot to make me truly like laugh out loud at stuff on the internet. I mean, it was amazing. If you as a program are going to throw shots like that, you also then have to be able to back it up. So I've noticed over the years, the Carolina fan base, love you guys, appreciate the support, but y'all get very, very upset when things are going bad, and you're very good at partying when things are going well. And I mean, Kendall, you're in class. The players are in class. They're getting, people are patting them on the back this week for the first time all year. People are hyping them up. Jason Brown's DMs are probably full right now. It's different. It is different when you win a game like that. how do you carry yourself now and stay focused compared to the week before? That's the biggest question going into this game. Can South Carolina deal with success? I think in every first year head coach's coaching career, there's milestones. There are first. You see Beamer, the first press conference, the first spring practice, the first real practice, the first game. This is Shane Beamer's first opportunity to show he can help walk his team through the process of dealing with success. It is a huge week for Shane Beamer. It is a huge week for the Gamecocks.
You said it earlier on GC Live in the week. You think this is Shane Beamer's toughest test so far in his career coaching at South Carolina, and I would have to agree with that, bouncing off of a huge win and continuing this success for South Carolina. You also said there that South Carolina fans are very good at partying when South Carolina wins. I would like to disagree and say they're very good at partying whether or not South Carolina wins or loses. I live very close to the fraternity lot, so on game days I'm always driving by, and goodness gracious, South Carolina could be losing by 50, they could be winning by 40, and those fraternity lots are having the time of their lives regardless. So as the old saying goes, South Carolina will never lose a tailgate. But Wes, before we get out of here, your prediction for this week, or do you want to maybe leave the fans on a little bit of a cliffhanger?
Yeah, we're going to go with a tease this time. Go read the game day guide. It's free. So even if you're not a subscriber, you can go check it out. It has pretty much, it's like a little, just quick view of everything you need to know about the game. Go check it out. It'll be on there. But I'm telling you, don't get too up for this game. I think it's going to be tight. Like, this is going to be a tight football game. Two very close football teams as far as their results so far this year, as we talked about earlier. Should be a fun afternoon. We'll see if the Gamecocks can pull it out. If they do, it's going to be a fun couple of weeks in Gamecock Nation, because I got a feeling Williams-Brice is going to be packed for Auburn and Clemson if there's a little bit of momentum going into those two games.
Especially with the emotion that come with those two games. Typically in the past, I wouldn't say Auburn had a lot of emotion attached to it for South Carolina, but we know the drama this year, especially with Mike Bobo and all that jazz that happened earlier on in the year. So we'll talk about Auburn next week. But tonight,
lot of Bobo, not much Bobo love in the Gamecock fan base.
No, not much at all. Not much at all. But tonight, South Carolina at Missouri, 4:00 p.m. on the SEC Network. That's going to do it for us here on this week's edition of Before the Sandstorm. Have a happy game day, everybody, and fingers crossed for a Carolina win. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I am a student, so I'm just going to rock with that. Wes, thanks for joining us today.